Hey there, internet friends, and welcome to That D Plus Show. Class is in session for the only show from that nerdy site that lets you know what kind of quality to expect right from the name. I'm your host, Trevor Starkey, and each week we dive into a different Disney Plus offering and discuss its history, how it holds up, and our general impressions on the thing. This show is made possible entirely by the support of our patrons over at patreon.com/thatnerdysite. So if you like the show and you could support us over there, we would greatly appreciate it. But if you can't, no big deal. The fact that you're listening is awesome. And of course, we would love it if you like, subscribe, rate, review, share the podcast with your friends, ring the notification bells on YouTube, all those things that us content creators tell you to do on a regular basis. Joining me today, we have two brand new guests to the That Nerdy Site universe. I put out the call for guests to talk about the Falcon and the Winter Soldier because nobody else from the site was ready to go or had watched. So joining us today,
it's their loss.
Exactly. We have Tucker Hazell from Backlog Banter. How you doing, Tucker?
I'm doing fantastic. I'm very excited to talk about this.
It's going to be some fun times. And we have Myron Scott from Level 1 News. How you doing, Myron?
I'm doing great.
Excellent. So before we dive in to kind of the topic of the show, I want to give you guys a little chance to do your plugs up front, and then we'll kind of circle back at the end and kind of reinforce it for the audience. But Tucker, let's start with you. Kind of, what do you do out on the internet, and who are you effectively? Who are you?
Well, good Force Awakens reference there, but I run a YouTube channel, Backlog Banter, with a couple of my friends. We do a lot of videos, probably way too many for this channel size we're at, but we do a lot of gaming videos. We have a weekly stream podcast called Backlog Bonus Stage. We do reviews of movies and games, and we do a series where we're reviewing all the Oscar Best Picture winners in a random order, and we're ranking them. So we have 92 episodes to get through there. But that's really fun, and I implore you to check it out. That's on podcast services at the Quest for the Bestest.
Quest for the Bestest. Excellent. Cool. And Myron, how about you? Give your plugs.
So like you said earlier, I work at Level 1 News as an editor. They're a tech review site, and they review tech, cameras, headphones, and stuff and such. On my own time, I run my own YouTube channel as well, where I do a bunch of reviews. I stream over on YouTube. I also, I'm a photography. I vlog, so you can follow me on the IGs and Twitter.
Excellent. Cool. And I will have kind of everything you can follow these guys on in the description of the show notes and all that stuff down below. So yeah, let's dive in. Of course, this is going to be the Falcon and the Winter Soldier episode, talking all about that show, that series. The segment of like, why did we pick it? Well, because it's the hot thing, but also we did the whole dumb thing of a Mighty Ducks month, and so that was still winding down when Falcon and the Winter Soldier wrapped up. So we kind of let the dust settle, get everybody else get their hot takes of the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and we percolated on it. We thought about it a little bit here.
Yeah.
Yeah. A little bit of the history on this for you. Originally released March 19th, 2021 through April 23rd, 2021. Other notable releases that I've pulled in of the time, you have also on Disney Plus, The Mighty Ducks Game Changers, which is still ongoing at the moment, and you had Invincible over on Amazon Prime. So it was a nice banger of a Friday, catching especially Falcon and the Winter Soldier and Invincible there. The runtime of these episodes is 40 to 50 minutes apiece, approximately. And in the MCU timeline of things, this falls between WandaVision, of course, which came out earlier this year from January 15th through March 5th, and Loki, which just got bumped up a couple days. It changed dates from when I started writing this doc. But yeah, that will be running June 9th through now July 14th instead of the 11th that it was originally. They're going Wednesdays on this one because Loki's going to be a little quirky guy. And then also the next, of course, big MCU film we have is going to be Black Widow, long delayed, but finally coming out here July 9th, 2021.
Good God, it's been a long time since a new MCU movie. Holy crap.
Yeah, the fact that we had nothing in the MCU last year, and then we've just gotten we've been gluttons for it so far this year has been delightful. No complaints from me there. I very much look forward to continuing on with Loki and even the movie kind of hype thing that came out last week, where we've got, not only do we have Black Widow, but we're also going to have Eternals or Shang-Chi and Eternals coming out still this year. So
and Spider-Man.
And Spider-Man. Yeah, Spider-Man 3. Yeah, the No Way Home. Yeah, it's gonna be a crazy makeup for last year. Yeah. As for the roll call, who's who in the film? We have, much like WandaVision, we had a sole director for the entire series, which is, of course, very rare in the TV space, but Carrie Skoglund directed this, who has worked on projects in the past like The Borgias, Vikings, and The Handmaid's Tale, a handful of episodes a piece. I believe she's kind of a journeyman director of TV. You have the writer here, Malcolm Spellman, kind of the core writer for the series, best known for his work on Empire, and as was announced shortly after the finale of The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, is kind of penning the script for an upcoming Captain America 4 movie. So very exciting there. The starring, we have, of course, the titular Falcon himself, Anthony Mackie, as Sam Wilson, Falcon Captain America. Got his start back in the 8 Mile, back in the day with 8 Mile, and then has gone on and worked on things like The Hurt Locker, a personal favorite of mine because I really remember enjoying it and whatnot. The Adjustment Bureau, he was in that. He has been playing Sam Wilson and the Falcon since Captain America: The Winter Soldier back in 2014. He was also in the Striking Vipers episode of Black Mirror, as well as the series on, I believe, Netflix, Altered Carbon. Sebastian Stan here, the other titular character of The Winter Soldier / Bucky Barnes. I remember first seeing him in a TV show called Kings that was basically like a very dramatic, modern telling of the David versus Goliath story. He was also in Hot Tub Time Machine. He has been playing Bucky Barnes in The Winter Soldier since Captain America: The First Avenger back in 2011. Wyatt Russell here playing John Walker / Captain America / U.S. Agent, was in 22 Jump Street. He was in the playtest episode of Black Mirror, as well as Ingrid Goes West and Overlord. Erin Kellerman playing Carly Morgenthau, best known as Emphas Nest in Solo: A Star Wars Story. Daniel Bruhl, making his return as Baron Zemo, was the German voice of Lightning McQueen in Cars, as well as in Glorious
I did not know that.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, he. So I can just imagine him saying "ka-chow," but in German.
Oh my god!
Wow.
Yeah, that was one of his early roles before he kind of started breaking out. I think Inglourious Basterds was probably his first like big mainstream film. He was also in The Bourne Ultimatum, Rush. And he's been playing Zemo since Captain America: Civil War in 2016. He's also going to be in the upcoming The Kingsman, kind of the prequel to the Kingsman series. Whenever that one actually comes out. That's another one that got super delayed because of the pandemic and everything. Emily Van Camp playing Sharon Carter, / the Power Broker. She's had a long run in TV series like Everwood, Brothers and Sisters, and Revenge. She's been playing Agent 13 / Sharon Carter since Captain America: The Winter Soldier, and she will be in, she's currently, I guess, doing a series called The Resident. Yeah, that was what that was. Sometimes I forget my own notes. And then the last one I pulled in here, Carl Lumbly playing Isaiah Bradley. Previously worked on shows like Alias. He's played John John / Martian Manhunter in a lot of DC stuff, like the Justice League animated stuff. If any of you know the TV show Chuck, which is a personal favorite of mine, he was John Casey's sensei for like one episode. That's very pivotal in John Casey's kind of backstory, and that's what I recognize Carl Lumbly from. And for some of our game friends, he is also the male voice of the Witch Doctor in Diablo 3. He also has like a handful of other gaming credits, but that was one that jumped out at me. And he has also been playing Mern Johns in Supergirl. And I don't know enough about DC lore to know who that is, but seemingly related to the Martian Manhunter family. So, yeah. So this was like one of the IMDb trivia things that I did not pull in here, but it's like this is his 5th comic book character role after doing some of that other DC stuff. A little bit of trivia for you. During the portion of the end credits that is accompanied by the photographs, graffiti, and newspaper clippings, Sebastian Stan receives top billing in the odd-numbered episodes of the series, and Anthony Mackie gets top billing in the even-numbered ones. However, when the more complete cast list shows up at the end, which I can almost never like actually freeze frame on, because that's always when like Disney Plus like shrinks it down and starts recommending WandaVision or whatever. During that section of the credits, Anthony Mackie always gets top billing as the titular Falcon, and then of course later Captain America. Carly Morgenthau, played by Erin Kellerman, is a female version of the character Carl Morgenthau, the Flag Smasher, a supervillain fanatic dedicated to establishing a one-world government by violently attacking the symbols of nationalism, who first appeared in Captain America Volume 1, Issue 312. In the comics, he leads an anti-nationalist terrorist organization called the Underground Liberated Totally Integrated Mobile Army to Unite Mankind, aka Ultimatum. Because, of course, a comic series that's going to have acronyms like SHIELD and SWORD is going to also have Ultimatum somehow
That's way too long.
Acronymized.
Not gonna lie.
That's why
I'm gonna go tell Carl, hey man.
That's why he shrinks it down to Ultimatum. The fact that like totally is in there, I was like, okay, that's clearly this has got to be a joke, right? Nope. And then the last little bit of trivia. Is it could be argued that the vibranium shield that serves as the major plot point and plot device of the series is not Steve Rogers' original shield, because obviously we saw that quite broken during the final battle with Thanos in Avengers Endgame, which could mean that the shield that Steve gave Sam at the end of Avengers Endgame was most likely a replacement gifted to him by King T'Challa. It might also be argued that when Tony Stark used the stones to change time, he could have restored things to the point before the final battle, which would mean that the shield was never broken. The shield that Sam gets has very subtle differences from Steve Rogers' original World War II shield, with this new shield having additional grooves and notches on the silver/white parts of the shield. One of those things I did not really think about, like when the show's on, until seeing like all of the Endgame like recap or reminder videos of like, hey, that came out 2 years ago, and how cool was it when all these moments happened? I was like, oh yeah, that's right. Like that shield got beat to crap at the end of that film.
It was like less than half of his shield at that point. And that's interesting to think about when I'll rewatch Endgame at some point. It's my personal favorite movie of all time. Just putting that out there for where I stand on it. But I'll watch that final sequence, and especially after Tony does his snap to return things back to normal. Do we see Steve holding a shield? Is it broken still? Does it get returned? No idea, but that's something to think about that I hadn't considered until I read your great show notes, by the way, which you sent to us.
Thank you.
Honestly, yeah, it was very informative.
Yeah. So this is the part of the show where we dive into does it hold up if it's an older thing. Obviously, this is quite brand new, so instead we just ask the question, what did we think? So, Myron, let me throw it to you first. What did you think of The Falcon and the Winter Soldier?
I think it was really phenomenal of a show, to be honest. And it wasn't just about, because at the end of the day, we all knew Sam was going to be Captain America, right? He got passed on the shield in Endgame, so it was eventually going to happen. It wasn't a matter of if, it was a matter of when. But I liked all the nuance of it, like the when they touched upon race and all the other things about it. Bucky dealing with his, going to his sessions. It was those, like. My favorite things about comics, I don't know about you guys, but it was catching up with the heroes. It's just not them superheroing, it's just them being normal. Mm-hmm. So him, both of them being snapped and trying to transition back to being normal after 5 years and all that stuff was great. And I just love the show for that. I'm glad they touched upon that besides them, doing superhero stuff and kicking butt.
Yeah, especially when you have like the wonderfully like quote unquote quiet scenes, like pretty much all of episode 5, where they're just like fixing up a boat and talking while playing catch. It's like that's what I will think of when I think of this show is the quiet moments of the characters more than the bombastic action. It has great action in it too, but yeah,
amazing.
I think some of that was great. How about you, Tucker? What were your thoughts on the series? You also rewatched it today before we sat down and recorded, so it's very fresh in your mind.
Yeah, to give a little bit of context on my opinions of this show, I watched it week to week, and I had not rewatched any of the episodes. So in preparation for today, I just binge watched the entire thing. Which, by the way, if you haven't done, I recommend doing that. This show works so much better when it's watched as one unit, because you get to connect moments from episode to episode, and it's a lot easier to remember character moments from earlier on in the show, because, when you're reaching episode 6 and you haven't seen episode 1 in a month and a half, there's character moments you don't remember, things like that, and it works out really well as one cohesive unit. And I, rewatching it this morning to a couple of hours ago, it's now one of my personal favorite projects in the Marvel Universe. I think the extended runtime of the fact that it's a TV show and it has so much more time to develop the characters leads to Sam, Bucky, and John Walker all being some of the best realized characters in the entire MCU in terms of their personalities, and it just has so many plot points and so many moving parts, and it's all about morally gray and political intrigue and stuff, and it works so well. I think it's an absolutely fantastic show, and again, it works so much better if you watch it as one thing rather than week to week.
Yeah, I think it's been interesting that like WandaVision, like especially because this was supposed to be the first one, but then the schedule shifted, and so we got WandaVision first. WandaVision, I think, works great in the episodic format that we got it in, in particular because, of course, it's doing so much with the episodic television of kind of the history of television and all that stuff. Whereas, I think I agree. I think this one, and I've seen other people kind of making that same claim, is like this one much more feels like it's just a long, 4.5 hour movie or whatever it is when it's all broken out. But just kind of like cut out, like they kind of have like, slight cliffhanger act breaks throughout that they turn TV-ified it. But I think when I think of it, it certainly plays more into the filmic kind of nature that we're used to from the MCU. One of the things that I thought of pretty much like from the jump of this one was I loved how it was immediately taking me back to arguably one of the greatest movies in the MCU and certainly one of the initial kind of like holy F moments that we had of the Captain America 2, the Winter Soldier, because it tackles like so much of that, like as you kind of said, the political intrigue that we got in that movie. That was such a different change of pace from what we'd seen in the MCU up to that point, and then going so far as to completely blowing up S.H.I.E.L.D. and basically Hail Hydra has been there all along and all that stuff. Like that was such a great turning point in early MCU. It feels weird to think of that as like early MCU at this point. Yeah. But we have so many callbacks, of course, in this series to that film in particular. Not only do we have characters that were introduced in that film, like Bucky and Sharon, kind of making getting the spotlight in this, but even like the opening fight that Sam has against Batroc is very much like reminiscent to Steve's opening fight in Winter Soldier against Batroc on the ship.
Yep.
And so it's very much like immediately kind of inviting you to draw those comparisons between Steve and Sam, and seeing the differences in how Sam approaches that fight because he's got the wings and can kind of do all the aerial stuff compared to Steve being the more grounded approach. And then we get to see kind of Sam do a combination of the two at the end when he faces Batroc in the finale. And has that great like launching the shield into the helicopter to knock the guy out. Like that was just wonderful. I loved just immediately how much this gave me Winter Soldier vibes, because that's one of my favorites in the MCU. It's I mean probably one of the top 5s for me. This immediately was like just hitting all those you're scratching all those itches. And as we kind of touched on, like just the fact that there is a lot of like fun downtime between Sam and Bucky. Like there are some moments where it's like, okay, yeah, they're doing the buddy cop thing that sometimes works, sometimes misses for me a little bit, but the times where they're just connecting and like reacting to each other and like in I think it was episode 2 when Bucky finally kind of like says it, like the reason I'm mad about you giving back the shield is because what if Steve was wrong about you, then he was wrong about me, and he's like he's put so much of his weight into that shield and what it means and the symbolism of it, and it was great getting to see Bucky open up in that regard, especially because obviously up until this point we really haven't seen too much of his like character. This I think is the pinnacle of what these kinds of shows can be, is like, hey, let's take characters that we haven't gotten to spend a ton of time with, just like we did with WandaVision, and let's really shine a spotlight on them and give them time to shine. And it's very reminiscent of like the Netflix shows for me, where it's like, hey, like the Purple Man in Jessica Jones was one of my favorite MCU villains for the longest time, because we had like 12 episodes with David Tennant getting to play that character, and we just don't get to see that all that much. We get little peeks into these characters' lives through the films, but really getting to sit with them for an extended period of time, I think, is great in these kinds of series. So let's talk about some favorite moments and or least favorite moments, but I think it sounds like we're probably going to have just a ton of favorites. So Tucker, hit me with some of your favorite moments.
Oh God, I really should have prepared this more. But
you took copious notes, so
Yeah, you got it.
So I really took notes on the thematic elements of the each episode and when interesting character moments happen. So for me, the most memorable moments of this show are when we get conflicts between characters that bring out aspects of their personalities, and you're able to get their different perspectives on a situation. And every character and every group in this show has a reason why they're doing it, and they're all pretty believable, and they all like, okay, I don't know who to necessarily side with on this because it's all really morally gray and complex. So I mean, when I think of episodes in this show and the moments that I like, there's the action, but I think the action is superseded by those quieter moments, like you were saying. So it's Sam and Bucky in the therapist office having to lock legs with one another and sort of quipping back and forth to one another, and then of course them having their relationship improve to the point where they can play catch with the Shield on his sister's front lawn and have a really deep and human conversation with one another, which ends with them being like, oh, okay, we're feeling closer to one another, but we don't really want to admit it. So it's those bonding moments that I think really stand out to me. And also, I'm just putting this out there for my perspective on this show. I really enjoy John Walker. I think he's one of the best written characters in the MCU. He's very hateable, and I understand why people dislike him from his the things that he did. But I think his complexity, his nuance, a lot of the moments that he had, even when he ends up murdering someone, are some of my most memorable moments in this.
Yeah, I can appreciate that. Like John Walker is certainly a fascinating character that I loved watching, especially because we kind of knew the arc that he was. We knew he was going to be a foil to Sam and Bucky from the minute we see him in his kind of goofy getup at the end of the first episode, and I like that. Like they did a pretty good job fleshing him out and giving us enough backstory about him to establish why the government has chosen him to be Captain America, and then in his conversations with Lamar, really getting to know more about the man behind that the public image and the legend that they'd built him out to be, and his insecurities. We get to see those moments and him kind of questioning the decisions that he made, or realizing that, like, when he thinks back about his medals of honor, it was a dark day and he had to do terrible things to, survive the day, basically. So I love that we got that. My only issues with him really end up being that the turn late in the series, like he turns around to the good a little more than I wish he had. Like, I wish he'd been a little more nebulous at the end. But obviously we get that, very clear-cut moment of, well, he can go do the selfish thing and go chase after Carly, or he can do the heroic thing and save the people. And while I appreciate that he does do the heroic thing, it's one of those things that it removes a little bit of the gray from the equation for him that I think would have been fun to kind of continue living in, to not know necessarily where his loyalty stands. Like, if basically, I wish he hadn't been put in that situation. I wish he could have just got to, get his rage out at Carly, and maybe then he gets sidelined so Bucky and Sam can still kind of save the day or whatever. But yeah, that's really my only gripes with him. And yeah, Wyatt Russell, I thought, did a great job with the role, kind of like capturing exactly why we as an audience should hate him. And so it's very disconcerting to see how some of the audience took that and basically were making death threats to the guy and stuff like that. It's like, hate the character.
Poor guy.
Don't hate the actor. We see that way too much.
It's not his fault that they wrote the character that way.
Yeah. We get it. He's not Steve. He's not Sam. You're supposed to feel those things, but don't take it out on the guy. He's just he showed up to do his job, and he clearly did his job very, very well. If it's eliciting that kind of response. How about Myron? What do you think on John Walker or anything else? Any of your other favorite moments?
I felt just like you guys. I kind of hated him, and just briefly knowing about who U.S. agent is supposed to be from reading the comments way back when. It kind of oh my god, I don't like him, but I'm glad that the show did dive into more of the history of Captain America, and that's honestly one of my favorite parts of the show, where they brought in the new Captain America because he does die, in the comics after Civil War and all that stuff that happens, and especially the Isaiah Bradley stuff, first Black Captain America stuff. Like, it just it felt so good to see like they like the MCU keep expanding. Like, that was such a deep dive. Like, I knew about this stuff. Like, I had to go into the wikis or look up my old stuff that I used to read to refresh myself, because it was like so long since I read that stuff. So it was kind of good for that to be brought to light with the Eli, Isaiah, and that was the best part. Even including the Wakanda stuff, calling that back. I didn't expect to see Ayo, whatever the Ayo, Ayo. I didn't expect to see that tie in, talking to White Wolf and all that stuff. So that was really, really cool of me. I'm always gonna geek out for that kind of stuff when it comes to Marvel, because that's like their best thing. They're always bringing a character, even he doesn't even show up in this issue. He's just there hanging out, that was awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, another moment like that, you get a cameo from Rhodey in the first episode.
Yeah, right, Rhodey.
And that's like, it's a interesting pop, because Rhodey, he's been in a lot of different stuff in smaller roles, but having him show up and have that conversation with Sam, he's one of the last heroes around, because everyone's off doing their own thing, and Rhodey is with the Smithsonian, and they have a really good conversation. It's like, okay, we weren't expecting to see Don Cheadle show up in this show, and he totally did. And now this is why you should care about all these Disney Plus shows.
Yeah. Was it just me? I'm sorry, Trevor. Was it just me that Sam, when Sam called for help at the end of the episode, did anyone expect to see Rhodey except for me?
Yeah, honestly, I had totally forgotten about him at that point, so I didn't expect him to
Really?
show up.
Oh, no, I thought he called in backup, and I assumed it was going to be Rhodey.
Yeah.
I didn't
That
think
would
it
have
was
been
going to be
fun.
Sharon.
Yeah. For me, I love that Rhodey being kind of in that first episode, especially when you like when you see Rhodey and Sam on there, and that's the sidekicks of Iron Man and Cap, who are both gone now, and so it's like they're both picking up that legacy of their respective kind of friends and carrying on. And so obviously we're going to see, this story was about telling Sam's. I imagine we'll see, Rhodey picking up in something future like Armor Wars or something like that.
Yep.
I'm sure we'll kind of pick up his story down the road. And so yeah, that was and the fact that it is, two men of color, kind of now like taking on those roles in the MCU, I think is really, really cool. And obviously, we get much more of the Sam perspective from this one, but even just the reminder of like, Don Cheadle is now going to be that guy, is it was a nice little moment to reinforce. And it's like, Don Cheadle absolutely is like a big, movie star and stuff, but the fact that he does like Showtime series and stuff like that, I remember so he's not like I was watching Ducktales on Disney Plus, and he occasionally comes in and is the very natural sounding voice of Donald Duck in a couple episodes, and so like he even does that and shows up for that kind of stuff. So I love that he's just game to show up when the story's right for him, and I thought that was a great kind of setting Sam on his path. But in that, going off what you were talking about, Myron, I would also like the way the show approaches race and the conversation about race, not only with Sam and what it's going to mean for him to pick up the shield, but also confronting, the dark history of Isaiah Bradley, is a great, I appreciate that they didn't shy away from it. I appreciate that cops show up and immediately start harassing Sam before realizing he's the celebrity. And obviously that's something we see. It's a little tropey almost in a lot of, when it's like a celebrity or something like that, we see pretty much that same interaction played out, but it's not something I was expecting to see in a Disney thing.
Absolutely not.
Yeah. Especially after obviously the year we've all had this past year and change, but then, many, many years leading up to that as well. I appreciate that they didn't shy away from that conversation. They put it on the forefront and said, like, we're gonna talk about this, and it's a very meta thing to kind of where Sam ends the series of, people are gonna hate me just for picking up this shield, but that's fine. I got to live with that. That's on them. That's not on me. Kind of is his approach, and it's very much like, a slap to the face of the racists that are going to look at this and say, keep your politics out of my Captain America. It's like, you don't understand this character at all if you don't think there are politics.
You don't understand
in this
Captain America at that point.
Honestly, honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think that it's honestly really cool how they brought in that aspect of it and balanced that alongside the concept of legacy, which is really what I think this show is about in the end. Because not only is Sam becoming Captain America, taking up that mantle after the death of his friend, and you get the conflict between Sam and Bucky about that, but then you also get Isaiah Bradley, who has a legacy to himself, and you have his grandson Eli Bradley, which I'm a big Young Avengers fan, so seeing him show up, I'm like,
Nice.
oh, hopefully that's setting him up for something. I'm also a big Champions fan, so seeing Joaquin Torres show up, and I'm like, okay, will he become a hero in the future? There's so much legacy that this builds out, and it's so exciting to see Marvel finally tackle the idea of passing on mantles and heroes training other heroes and meaning things to one another. And there's so much to that. And of course, legacy also means family history. You get introduced to Sam's family and they talk about their family's legacy, and Isaiah talks about the legacy of being a black man in history, and there's so many different aspects to legacy that this show touches on. And then of course you get a monkey wrench thrown in, which is John Walker, who is now a part of the Captain America legacy, a dark stain on that name, on that legacy, but an important one nonetheless, and the idea of how that foils with Isaiah being uncomfortable with a black man becoming Captain America, but Sam realizing, no, I have to do this for myself, like it's worth the pain to be a symbol to the nation. There's just so much to that. I'm very glad they went that in depth with it, and I think, if I may, to shift the conversation a little bit, I think, unfortunately, this show has the issue of it's just got so many ideas. It's got so many characters and so many groups that there are just some that don't get fleshed out.
Yeah.
And it's so ambitious in that, and I think that's why I enjoy it so much. I think, on the whole, it hits way more than it fails. But Sharon Carter is heavily underutilized. She feels kind of cheap in some sequences. I like the Flag Smashers from their idealistic perspective, and I think Carly's an interesting character, but she has so many friends that I just do not care about, and they do not get any development in it. But I think the fact that they did so much that did work, I'm like, okay, I can let the weaker elements slide a little bit because it's just so ambitious, and there's so many different things going on.
Yeah, absolutely. I love kind of tying both of your thoughts there together. I love that the Shield's legacy means something very different to everybody in this show, including like people like Carly, like Isaiah, and that's like, and the show grapples with that. It does say, yeah, American imperialism and exceptionalism like has its flaws, and we need to address that and discuss it. We can't just bury it in the past because that's how you dismiss the lives of people like Isaiah Bradley and all of his kind of his fellow soldiers and that stuff. And it's something we see a lot, especially kind of as we continue as a country to kind of grow and recontextualize and re-examine stuff. The fact that all of the Isaiah Bradley stuff is, very much kind of pulling off the real life Tuskegee experiments and stuff. It's like, it gave me a great vibe, like when I watched Watchmen last year, and that kind of went into all the Tulsa race riots and stuff like that, and it's shining a light on things that too often get whitewashed over time, and because we don't want to look at the damaging parts of our past, we don't want to examine or analyze or review those kinds of elements, and so I appreciate that, like, the show confronts that, and Carly has a lot of those similar thoughts of like the Shield should be destroyed because America has gone out and done too much damage to the rest of the world in pursuit of their own exceptionalism and stuff like that. And so I appreciate that everybody's grappling with what that symbol, that shield, that legacy means. Even the characters that don't necessarily get as much time to shine or as fleshed out as I would have liked. I agree. I think Carly and the Flag Smashers as a whole are probably one of the weaker elements. In that, like, I wish she hadn't blown up that embassy. Is pretty much like, I wish she hadn't turned evil. Like, the first couple episodes, when it is like about this ideology of like, we shouldn't be refugees, like we had to survive while half the world was gone, and now that everybody's back, we're the ones being displaced. How is that fair to us? Like, it's a big concept, but I think it immediately gets muddied when she starts killing people in the name of that and stuff, and then it's immediately like, okay, well, she's not a gray character anymore. She's a pretty dark character, and even though her team isn't necessarily getting behind her on this, and we see that at the end where like she does the whole one world, one people thing, and they don't respond until she kind of threatens them into it. It's like, okay, you were a much more interesting character before you went to the dark side. So again, similar to like some of the John Walker stuff. Like, I wish they had let it be more ambiguous, because I feel like the show could have played around with that more and had more interesting conversations. Like, I love the conversation that she has with Sam, where Sam's kind of like, I understand, where you're coming from, and I'm not on your side. It's just I can't, I'm not going to get behind you killing people in the name of this mission that you're on. Like, when they had those kind of like very heady kind of like theoretical conversations about it, it's far more interesting than her blowing up a building of people and saying like, this is the only language they understand. It's like, that's so tropey. I didn't need that. How about you, Myron? Any thoughts to add on that subject?
I'm really impressed how the show turned the Shield into a full-fledged character. Like you said earlier, like, it just meant something different to everybody. So I was really taken back by when the time John Walker killed the Flash Smasher in front of everybody. Just the tonal shift that Shield took. It felt like I was there, like, witnessing this myself, to be honest. But again, like, it was so impressive for me, to the writers, just to from episode to episode, everyone saying something about the Shield, and as like it was a real person, and it carried so much emotion even after everything that's happened with Steve being gone and Sam giving it away. So it was just really impressive for me from the showrunners to do that, and the writers. Yeah.
Let's bounce off of the other kind of point you brought up there, Tucker, of Sharon. I'm especially curious to you, Tucker, as you just kind of rewatched everything. In rewatching everything, now knowing for sure that Sharon is the power broker and all that stuff, does her arc hold up at all, or does she kind of work against herself at times?
Well, the problem with her character arc is that she's essentially one note in this, right? You can tell she's conniving, even when weren't confirmed that she was going to be the power broker. She's calling people, she's stealing art, she's working in Madripoor, which, by the way, great that they included Madripoor. I hope that shows up in future MCU projects, but she's just not that interesting because she's so one note, right? No one exactly trusts her. Sam maybe is sort of glossed over by the fact that she helped them during the events of Civil War, but she's kind of just always calling people and like getting things set up in the background. There's a lot of shots that'll cut away to her doing something and she won't show up for another 30 minutes. Like, okay, well, if she's really going to be that backgrounded, why include her in this sequence? I just think she's underutilized because the power broker as a concept, at least from my experience in the comics, is very interesting and does lead to characters like U.S. Agent getting abilities, and I think also ties into how Patriot gets his powers. But it's unfortunate that she's kind of just this skeezy person, and she doesn't really have that redeeming quality. Her redeeming quality is that we knew she was good in Civil War, but we don't really see that in this. Of course, she does help Sam, Bucky, and Zemo quite a few times, which, by the way, we haven't really talked about Zemo yet. We can get into that in a bit. But I just think it's not satisfying to see her be conniving because her arc is so flat. And when you get the post-credit sequence, her saying, yeah, we're going to sell government technology. Okay, well, to who? What does that mean? Like, she's in power now, but what slot does that actually put her in? We can't even tell what project she's going to be in the future because it's so ambiguous. I'm just underwhelmed by her character, and I think she's one of the weakest aspects of the show.
Yeah, I agree with that. Any thoughts to add there, Myron?
No, Trevor Tucker covered it all. So it's just she didn't really do much for me, to be honest. If anything, I expected her a lot more from her. Not even if she was a bad guy from the get go, I expected a lot more. It was kind of like, honestly, I would even go say disappointing. The power broker career. I think if anything, it should have been a lot earlier. She should have been putting more of the stuff going on with the Flag Smashers. Like, I would have been cool for her to blow up the embassy instead of Carly.
Sure.
So that would have been Carly's like,
Yeah,
you know,
or
she would have been conflicted.
I mean, yeah, like especially if it was like her blowing it up, but then blaming Carly for it or something. Like
Right, exactly.
framing that. I think that's a way better idea.
Yeah,
I wish they had done that.
Yeah, I don't
Dang
know,
it,
like-
Myron! Don't fix the show.
One thing I think is interesting about that actually is on my rewatch. I didn't really catch this the first time, but Carly and Sharon actually have a history together. Sharon sort of started, I think,
Right,
sort of
right.
started the Flag Smashers and gave Carly a home. I think probably during the blip or whatever. But it's really sad that didn't get played out at all. I didn't. You would not have known it happened at all until they flat out say it in their last confrontation, in which Sharon ends up killing both Batroc and Carly. But they just had to say it flat out as the show was wrapping up. Like, oh, but that's a cool idea, and that really adds some nuance to these characters and their history. But it's really underplayed, I think, in the way that those characters are related. So you're right in the fact that it could have been so much more interesting, even if there was that one moment of conflict between the two of them.
Yeah, I think we've all probably heard that there was that subplot probably got significantly reworked because of the pandemic and stuff. It seems like the original kind of approach to it was probably going to be more like disease focused, and it was like, hey, maybe we shouldn't remind everybody about a disease while we're all dealing with a global disease. So like it definitely seems like, especially in like the last episode, that things got kind of like piecemealed together to do what they could with what they had. But yeah, I think I especially think that like the relationship between them is set up, but it's set up like through texts and stuff, and so it's not like we don't really get a great sense of their relationship and their dynamic until they're face to face, which could have been like Myron like nailed it. Like if the Power Broker had been playing this cat and mouse game with Carly and the Flag Smashers and like keeping them on the run by putting a spotlight on them that they didn't want or something like that, by blowing up an embassy or something, like that would have been a really cool dynamic to see between them, that then you could have had like a big payoff in a big blowout between them at the end. And yeah, it just kind of putters out instead.
Yeah.
I think I'll be curious because I haven't sat down and like rewatched it since the finale myself, but I feel like
Same.
like thinking back to the Madripoor episode, and it's like, okay, so Sharon like basically kills the people so that she could put the Bitcoin bounty on Zemo and
the
like
John Wick 2
yeah, there's like a
style
whole
deal.
like that's where it seems like is she working against her own self-interests in some of that sequence, because we now know that she's the Power Broker and she's there, helping them out or something like that. It's all weird. Like she takes them to the guy that has the super serum, knowing full well that Baron Zemo has a vendetta against anybody with super serum stuff. Like
Exactly.
weird that like she just kind of like didn't anticipate that, oh, we're gonna kill this guy.
This is not going to go
Crap.
well.
This, and then she's like super cool about it when they
So
blow up
chill.
the lab and kill the guy. She's like, well,
Yeah.
like that was her plan, was basically like to get back and make more super soldier serum and stuff, and now she can't do that anymore. So yeah, weird approaches there. But touching on that, you mentioned Tucker. Let's talk about Baron Zemo and kind of his return. He, prior to this, has been one of my favorite villains in the MCU. Obviously, he's not like flashy as somebody like Loki or something like that. But the fact that Civil War ends and he got what he wanted, apart from killing himself or something like that, but he tore the Avengers apart like he wanted to. He got rid of the super soldiers like he wanted to. Like he was one of the best villains that they had kind of going, and so I love that they bring him back and kind of add these extra layers to him, and we get to like that we get to see him dancing, of course, as one little bit.
Best gif ever.
Yeah.
Not only GIF, did you guys see on the official Marvel Studios YouTube page, 1 hour of Baron Zemo dancing?
Yeah.
Stop.
Yeah.
Go
They
favorite that video
officially
right now.
put that out. For what? For why?
That's
But it's just
awesome.
hilarious.
Yeah, it's they did a great job of like it's like 15 seconds of stuff, but they just kind of loop it over and over or whatever. It's like like when they first tweeted out like there's more than just that GIF, I was like, well, I would hope so. I would hope they didn't like set up the shot and like get all those
All right,
extras
Daniel,
on.
dance.
Yeah,
Okay,
bring Daniel
we're
out. Okay, do 3 fist pumps and then we're done. Cool, cut, wrap. All right, that's a wrap on Daniel Brühl, everybody. Thank you.
Definitely had a whole dance party.
Yeah.
I
yeah.
would hope so. But one thing I think is interesting that you mentioned is that he won in Civil War, and he was content with that. And then when Bucky breaks him out, he wins again. He gets what he wanted in this show too. He not only destroys the super soldier serum and kills the guy, or the one guy that can create it, but he also has his butler, his Alfred guy, blow up the Flag Smasher. So basically, all of the super soldiers are dead now, and he's just sitting in the raft, happy as a fucking clam.
Yeah, there's basically like the one
French,
that Sam threw into the river is left, and then Bucky, of course, is still out there.
Yeah.
But and I guess John Walker now. So yeah, there's like, but yeah, he got rid of most of them from behind bars, so the raft's not super effective. It seems. Yeah.
Who knows how he's getting stuff out, but also it sets him up for future involvement, and I think also ties into something we also haven't touched on, which goes to show how many dang things there just are going on in this show. Is the introduction of Val, Julia Louis-Dreyfus's character, who is in the comics the lover of Nick Fury. So maybe she's setting up her own Avengers, maybe a darker Avengers, maybe a Thunderbolt style thing. We're not sure yet, but isn't that interesting? She's manipulating John Walker and feeding into his insecurities and sort of bolstering him. And so we're going to see that play up. Maybe she pulls in Zemo. Maybe she pulls in some of the other villains that haven't died yet. That's so fascinating.
Yeah.
It's really interesting.
I'll be especially curious when Black Widow comes out, because I was reading something that basically, like, she was supposed to be introduced in that, but obviously things got shifted around. And because she doesn't, like, it was really cool seeing her pop up, but it was more cool seeing her pop up because, like, oh, cool, they got Julia Louis-Dreyfus. Nice.
1,000%. 1,000%.
And then, like, immediately, I'm Googling the character, and I'm like,
Same.
what was her long name? Because I don't know any of that.
Good God, long name.
Oh, Madam Hydra? Okay, cool. Like, Nick Fury's lover? Okay, cool. Like, whatever, I'm on board. Like, sure. It's It's Julia Louis-Dreyfus, so she's going to be great. But yeah, it was definitely, her stuff, I mean, especially when we come back to her at the end, it feels like basically they brought her on set for like one day and just shot all of her stuff in that set to keep, her hidden and everything like that. So, like,
I heard that she like put on like a hoodie or something to hide that she was coming on set. So it was a real secret thing.
Yeah.
Which is fun that they like let you know that behind the scenes, we're even keeping this much on lockdown.
Yeah,
those disguises have to be in the contract, right?
I mean, yeah,
exactly.
And I mean, the fact that it didn't leak, that was really cool. Like they had basically teased, like, hey, there's going to be a new, important character to the MCU that hasn't been seen on film before. Like they're going to be making their debut, and so I was watching that episode, kind of like waiting to see who that was going to be, and then she shows up. I was like, oh, well, this must be who it is. I have no idea who that character is, but it's cool that they got her to do it. So. I look forward to whatever, like, kind of squad of anti-heroes she puts together.
That's really exciting.
Yeah.
And I also think that's exciting for the future of John Walker as a character. Of course, at the end, his final sequence, we get that incredible comic-accurate U.S. agent costume, which I think looks great. And he's sort of feeling like, yeah, I'm back. I can finally do what I want. I don't have the government looking over my shoulder. I'm working for this weird, shady woman who I don't really know, but he wants to, go out and be a vigilante and probably be the hero that he sees in himself. But it'll be interesting to see how that plays out with him in the future, because we know he's a complicated guy. He's got emotional anxieties and insecurities and stuff, and now he's got someone manipulating him from behind, telling him he's so cool and giving him a suit and stuff, but there's no way she's being serious with all that. So that's going to come to a head at some point in the future of the MCU. I think could be really interesting as sort of a peek to his arc as a character that we're seeing introduced here.
Yeah, absolutely. Any other highlights you want to bring to the forefront, Myron?
The suit. The
new
Captain
suit?
Yeah. The new suit is beautiful. It's gorgeous. I honestly was afraid that it was gonna look a little gimmicky, because like in the books it does look like it's a little over the top, but it transitioned so well, and I think I was just excited to finally see him in the suit. Yeah, and have carry the shield around, swing it around, flying around with it. It was so impressive. It gave me chills. It got chills right now, honestly, talking about it, because it's just so beautiful.
Absolutely, yeah. It was a great. I mean, it's a great set up that like, you know, Bucky brings the suitcase while they're working on the boat and stuff, and it's just kind of there. It's like we know there's something cool in that, and then they do the tease at the end of the episode, and we don't get to see it. We had to wait a week to come back and see it, and yeah, like just when he's like flying into that scene, like, and we see him kind of like against the skyline or whatever, like, oh cool, we're about to see the suit, and he just comes like barreling through that window, and I'm like, yeah. That looks really nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Shout out to Wakanda's tailors that made that work, and what, like vibranium wings that can like,
obviously
ricochet a helicopter on a bridge and stuff.
Oh man,
like yeah. John Walker ain't ripping those ones off. So
nope.
Yeah, got a lot of heft to that. So that was really cool.
I honestly, when I saw it the first time, I was a little bit turned off by it. I think there's there's a lot of design to it. Like, it's so intentionally comic accurate.
Intricate, yeah.
Exactly, yeah. And there's like, he's got like weird chunky shoulder pad, and there's like things coming off of it and stuff. And it's like, okay, all right, calm down a little bit. And of course, I think they'll streamline it by his next appearance. But it was fun to get a really comic accurate version translated to screen. And I think everything from that moment on, with Sam becoming the role of Captain America, is really well done. I mean, I think that's one of the highlights of the show, clearly leading to that. But you get a lot of really creatively choreographed fights with him utilizing both the shield and the wings. As you said, he forms like a shell around himself and a guy with the shield and the wings.
Oh, that was
so
amazing.
Cool. He uses the wings to stop himself when Carly punches the shield. He's using the power set and the combination of the two aspects to its fullest potential, and I think it really shows, okay, this is why he's different as Captain America, and why this is really cool. And honestly, in my opinion, cooler than anything Steve ever did. I'm just putting it out there, but
yeah, Steve
I'm just
couldn't
such a
fly.
fan.
Bro, he stopped the helicopter.
Yeah, he did do that, yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm just such a fan of the way that they took the shield throwing aspect and worked it into him rocketing around and his wings folding up behind him, or like him gliding down with the wings spread out. It's such a powerful symbol that I feel like will become super iconic the more he's
I also think it makes him like it gives him his chapter with the shield because it's so unique. It's like a unique moveset. It's nothing like Steve or Stan.
It's not an Echo Fighter.
Yeah, exactly. So it was just him doing his own thing, and shout out, that's him training in his woods, in the backwoods of his sister's house, right?
Yeah, montage. Yeah,
yeah.
He does a lot of practicing of these flippy dudes.
The flip throws. Yeah.
But it works into his like, you know, really agile moveset. And I think also on top of that, him becoming Captain America, one of the more interesting aspects of watching this show back to back and being able to see what his character is like is you get a lot of how he utilizes his negotiation abilities, his interpersonal communication skills that he started as
the trauma counselor
veterans.
And stuff. Yeah,
exactly. Right. Yeah, in Winter Soldier, and I kind of forgot about that, and so when I watched the show for the first time, I was like, okay, yeah, you know, he's good at talking to people, but there's actually something there for his character, and he's helping Bucky with some of his trauma, and he's giving him advice. He's helping Isaiah with some of his trauma, and then he uses those negotiation skills to give a really powerful speech to the world about that he is Captain America, and that, you know, perspective is so important when considering the world and the blip and governments, and it's so far-reaching but so personal to who he is and his abilities as a person, and shows why, you know, Steve was a confident leader, but he's confident interpersonally, right? He can calm down a situation in a way that I don't think Steve could, and it's really fun to see him. It's really powerful to see him use that skill alongside his skills as a superhero with wings and a shield and being flashy and badass. But he's a great character, and I'm so excited we got an announcement for a movie with him. I mean, come on, that's gonna be amazing.
Yeah, and I like, especially given the themes that I think they can continue telling a lot of those stories, and we'll see them kind of on the big screen, and we'll see, like, yes, we got like him assuming the mantle, but seeing him actually like continue the mantle and seeing how the world reacts to him, I think will be really interesting in a movie.
Did either of you read the Captain America Sam Wilson comic run? Because a great run of comics, but
I actually did. I did the first like maybe 6 issues. Oh, and
There's a lot of stuff they can pull from in there, and of course that run also introduces him as like sort of a people's Captain America. He's got like people sending him messages. He's got like an app, I think, that he can like request. People can request, "Hey, Captain America, come help me." But it also has the introduction
it's
of
Spider-Man Miles Morales.
Yeah, exactly.
Essentially, yeah.
True, yeah, I didn't think of it that way. But it also has the introduction of Joaquin Torres as the second Falcon, and also not Eli Bradley, but there's another Rayshawn Lucas as the second Patriot. So there could be a continuing legacy thing in this fourth Captain America movie where we get Captain America, Sam Wilson, having sidekicks and continuing that legacy and expanding it outward, and the Falcon DNA going to Joaquin and the Captain America DNA going to Patriot or Eli, and I just think there's so much potential there.
Yeah, it's I'm very excited to see kind of where they go with it. One of the things that we've touched on a little bit there that I want to highlight is like, what did you guys think of the action for the series? Because I thought like especially like kicking it off with that sequence over Syria or Lebanon, wherever it was, I thought was like I was like, oh, we're right into like this is film level. Like I like would have expected to see a sequence like that at the beginning of a Captain America 4 or something like that. I thought they did a great job kind of like handling that. But then also we have like great fights like Sam versus Bucky versus John, or not versus Bucky, but Sam and Bucky versus John. When they're trying to get the shield from him, and then kind of the closing bits there of Sam against the Flag Smashers and Batroc. So what did you guys think of the choreography / action sequences throughout the show? Myron, let's start with you.
I think they were awesome, really awesome, and it puts the show's action at at a high level, and I think that's why most people were like taken aback by like in episode 5 where they were like more like calm down to earth, because the level was so high. Because even in that first. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna, like when Joaquin basically says what like sometimes there's nothing to do but wait or whatever, like whatever that little bit. It's like, and then like 10 minutes later when nothing has happened, I'm like, oh, that's just what this episode's gonna be. It's they're waiting for their lead or whatever. They're waiting for Carly to make their move. Okay, so we're just gonna get these quiet moments with them fixing up a boat. Nice.
But yeah, just like even with that same episode 5, that's the one that kicks off. They're chasing John Walker and that beautiful fight scene where he literally shows off that he really did take the super soldier. Well, finally answers our questions that he really took it, ripping off his wings and actually even giving Bucky a couple punches and winding him a little bit. So, but no, I really appreciate the action because I really didn't expect it. Like like you said, like movie level action for a TV show. Like I'm pretty sure most of their budget went into just fight scenes alone.
Yeah, and it's interesting to see this movie-level choreography that is not only, we got Winter Soldier-style knife fights and stuff, but I think they also incorporated, the superhero and abilities aspect into it a little more. They're throwing big things and tossing one another across the map, and I think that made it, for me, a little more flashy and interesting, because I like the Winter Soldier action, but I'm more bombastic superhero lasers and stuff action. That's my cup of tea, and it was a good balance between the two. And it was interesting to see
the fight against the Wakandans that I'd forgotten about as well.
Yes, I was about
to bring that was a good one too. Yeah.
Because of course they handily kick all their asses because the Dora Milaje just knows what they're doing, and of course that plays into an interesting moment with John Walker's character, and he's like, they weren't even super soldiers, and I still lost, and you can see the gears turning in his head like, wow, if I can't even stand up to these not super soldiers, how am I going to be Captain America? So that pushes him to make the decision to take the serum. And of course, I'm going on a different tangent there, but but I really like this action. It was interesting to see how much they did of action in this, and of course, they're mostly quiet moments. But WandaVision, almost none of that till the very end. And honestly, action in WandaVision at the end, not great. Lower tier action sequences in my opinion, and we're not talking about that show, but it's interesting to see them go from that with basically no action to this is a Marvel movie. There are action sequences almost every episode, and they're on that choreography level and that production level that's so high. Flying through that canyon, of course, we saw in the trailers, but man, oh my god, I don't know how they did. I don't know how they did it. But and that's the best way to feel when you're watching. It's like, wow, this is movie magic. Yeah. And they've really made it look great.
If anything, like that was like watching that episode, I was like, this would have been really cool because I know in a different world there would have been movie theaters that screened like, hey, come see a special screening of the first episode of the
1000%.
Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and seeing a sequence like that on the big screen would have been really, really cool. And so eventually I'm sure we will, we'll see those kinds of things maybe somewhere down the line at like your Alamo Draft House or something like that. But that was definitely something I remember thinking about watching that. I was like, oh man, like this is wasted on like I have a nice big screen OLED TV, but even there is like, this is wasted here. This would have been a really cool thing to see, in a big in a theater with a ton of fans and stuff like that. Yeah, I really enjoyed the fight sequences here, and I like the kind of like you touched on there, Tucker. Like they had a good variety to them. That you do kind of get a little bit of everybody's flavor throughout, including because you also had that Winter Soldier flashback sequence where he just decimates the room of his targets in his Winter Soldier days and stuff. Yeah, one of the things that like it's kind of always been a little bit in the back of my mind whenever Captain America's out there, but it definitely kind of came to the forefront in this series is I just don't understand the physics of the shield. Like sometimes it just bounces off somebody perfectly fine, and then other times it gets stuck in drywall and John has to like yank it out. and it's like, okay, so like why can it just bounce off of Zemo's face and just knock him out cold? And then other times it will cut through stuff. Like that's one of those I'm like, I wish there was like something that made a little bit more sense in that. Because otherwise it's just like it's funny when it's just like when it just ping pongs off of somebody's head or something like that. It's like it feels like even if that had been like even seeing that person would be unconscious. Like fine, it didn't decapitate them, but they'd still be like out for the count. They're done with this fight, and then nope, they bounce right back up. It's like, well, then what is the
concussion?
Point? Yeah.
Can't go to school. Can't look at screens for months.
Yeah. So that definitely kind of came to the forefront, especially because of the different ways we see it used in those last couple episodes. Yeah. Any final thoughts or any other last favorite moments anybody wants to give some love to, give a shout out to?
No, I think we covered everything on my part. For me, at least. Yeah.
Any
for me,
final thoughts there, Tucker?
Yeah, for me, I just kind of want to end this, and I kind of hinted at my affinity for this earlier in our discussion, but I implore people to rewatch this show as one long thing so you can get the character dynamics, but B, I implore people to give John Walker a larger chance. And it feels weird that I'm sort of supporting the villain, but he's not fully a villain, but I think John Walker is such an interesting character that people just went with their gut feeling on it. And of course, you're supposed to hate him at first. You're supposed to be like, yeah, he's not Steve. Who's this guy doing? But he is such a fascinating character from the backstory we get with him, the insecurities that he has, the ways that he isn't Steve, but he has these heroic tendencies, as well as these darker sides that the heroic tendency end up winning in the end. And you have this battle within this character that I think is so fascinating and something we haven't really seen from Marvel characters. We don't get as complex characters that have such deep insecurities and have done such terrible mistakes that they need to atone for. I think watching this through the lens that John Walker is an inherently good person but has these outbursts. He has this aggression. He has this uncontrollable rage that is, of course, exacerbated by the super soldier serum, but that at the end of the day, he is heroic. He's a good person deep down, and I think people are kind of just on face value giving him a lot of shit, and I don't really think that's fair. And I think that, give John Walker a shot. Hashtag. I think there's an interesting character in there that I can't wait to see more of the MCU.
I mean, he definitely wrestles with a lot of the same things that Sam wrestles with, but we see Sam wrestling with those things as a point of view character, and John doesn't necessarily have the luxury because he is thrust into the spotlight, even as he's having these doubts and these insecurities about can he hold the
fill the shoes? Yeah.
Can he fill the shoes of Steve? And he's like, he comes out and says like, I'm not trying to replace Steve, but they've given me a job to do. I'm going to try and do it. I guess tying into some of my issues with his characterization are that when he goes to see like Lamar's family, and I don't know if he is so delusional that he thinks he killed the person that killed Lamar, or he's trying to justify his actions by doing that. Like it's just not like it wasn't handled well enough to give me like a sense of closure on like, am I supposed to side with him in this, or am I supposed to like think he's a tragic character right now? And I don't like, yeah. So that's where like my resistance to him at this moment is. I agree with you in a lot of ways, in that like he's a very fascinating character and absolutely clearly a flawed one. It's just I don't know how Marvel wants me to feel about him, or how the MCU wants me to feel about him, because of just some of the choices that they and he make in the last couple chapters of this saga. It'll be interesting. I mean, I'm again, Wyatt Russell I think does a great job in the role, and so I'm very interested and eager to see him, continue to pop up in the series. But what flavor of U.S. Agent are we going to get? I guess.
Sure.
But yeah, give John Walker a chance. Hashtag.
Hashtag.
All right. So let us go ahead and pull out the report card. This is the part where we go ahead and we grade the series from A+ to F. So Myron, we'll start with you. What grade do you want to give The Falcon and the Winter Soldier here?
I'd give it an A-.
A-? Cool. Any rationale behind like any things that it just didn't quite hit on to keep it from the A?
So I would have given it an A+ or A++. If it just villain wise, like I wanted someone more of a challenger, but I think the show was just trying to prove that it was more of a Sam story, So that just took a back seat from the get go. So yeah, I only wish Power Broker or the Flag Smasher were more of a prevalent issue, or more of an antagonist for Sam and Bucket to get over.
Yeah, maybe more, even just more of a threat. Like,
exactly.
They lose kind of that first fight, but like there's never really any doubt that the series isn't going to end with them overcoming those guys, really.
Right.
All right, cool. And how about you, Tucker?
I would have given this, if I hadn't rewatched today, I would have been like B+, maybe, B. I initially, I think through the week to week viewing of it, I was a little bit hesitant on a few aspects of it. I think breaking it up and having a week in between each episode, I sort of ended up forgetting some aspects of it and felt underwhelmed by the ending. But on this rewatch today, I realized this is a lot more nuanced of a show than I initially thought. And I think that Myron, you make a good point that there's not necessarily a clear villain, and that's something we're not used to in the MCU, because we're used to a big bad that blows up buildings and punches people, and you're like, okay, yeah, our hero has to take this guy down. But this show, I think, did something a little bit more interesting that ended up putting it above other. This is my top favorite MCU projects, as I said. I think the idea of not having a clear-cut villain and saying, there is validity to all these perspectives. The GRC they're a bureaucratic organization that's full of people that don't know what's going on, but when you listen to their message about helping these people reintegrate into society and return to a sense of normalcy, it's like that there's truth in there, there's goodness in there, but they're not doing it right. And the Flag Smashers, they're blowing up buildings, but they're still helping people, and they have validity to their perspective, and Zemo has validity to his perspective, and Sam and Bucky and John and Lamar and all these different things. It's a conflict of values, and I think that makes it so fascinating to me, and is why I really love the show. On that rewatch, on this reflection, through this discussion, I realized that it's really something more. It's really complex in terms of the issues that it tackles, and of course all the themes that we talked about. But I'm so excited to see where Sam goes from here. I'm so excited to see where John goes from here. I'm excited to see, a little less so, but Sharon and the Power Broker stuff. We'll see where that pops up. But this is by far and away my favorite recent MCU thing, Endgame aside. And I'm very happy I gave it that rewatch. And I suggest you guys to do the same. I'd love to hear if your opinions change at all.
Mm-hmm. So what was your grade then?
A.
Excellent. Yeah, I
held it back from the A+ because I do think that Sharon and Flag Smasher and stuff a little bit weak in places, and it does jump around a lot. There's a lot of like, okay, we're going here now.
Yeah.
There's no jumping. Okay, we got a phone call. We got to go here right now, and it feels a little bit convenient. But Those things are minor in what I think the show does so well.
Yeah, I agree. I give it an A as well. I think touching on kind of a lot of the points both of you just made, while the Carly stuff and the Flag Smashers and the Power Broker stuff isn't as developed as I would like, there's also an element of, well, the things that they developed in kind of favor of those elements, like Sam's story, like the Isaiah Bradley stuff, I thought hit so well that that's what this series is about for me. The fact that like racism is basically one of the villains of the series, and American imperialism and colonialism, and like it's not something that you can just punch in the face like Hitler, like Steve had it easy, and his villains were Nazis.
He was only fighting Nazis. That's simple.
Exactly. Like it's a very clear cut thing, and this is, as kind of one of even the Flag Smasher characters kind of touch on, like this is a Captain America for a new age, for a modern age that isn't as it is harder to see our enemies. In that regard, in that light, and so like the fact that it's struggling to grapple with those issues, and it's attempting to address those issues. It's a lot of them are like bigger issues. I mean, like we didn't even talk about like the idea of like all these people with a blip trying to come back and not being able to get like bank loans and stuff that like
that was
it like
so glad they touched on that. So
exactly.
fascinating.
We just like. I love that they touch on elements of like, hey, yeah, the world shifted, and it's not like the Infinity War comic where it's like they get snapped and then it comes back to normal pretty quickly. It's this world existed for 5 years, completely messed up, and I love that we're continuing to see glimpses of how that affected everything, and that it's still very much. I don't think we'll ever see it to the degree that I would love to see something like The Leftovers or something like that. But the fact that it didn't just like drop it at the end of Endgame. Everybody's back, yay! Like the world is back to normal. We're still dealing with the ramifications of that seismic event. I appreciate, and it is a bigger, complex thing that is tougher to visualize in TV or film or something like that, compared to, hey, here's some super soldiers that these guys can fight. That's certainly an easier villain, and you have of course the punch harder kind of end that you get of that, but you can't punch racism harder. You can't punch the systemic injustices that Isaiah Bradley dealt with harder. So the fact that the show is attempting to address those things almost in favor or above and beyond the Flag Smasher stuff and the Power Broker stuff, I thought is interesting and certainly is why I would give it an A. If we'd gotten like both of those elements, if also the Flag Smashers and Power Broker stuff had also like risen to that level, it would have been an easy A+, and certainly again like you think, Tucker, one of my top things in the MCU, but still great all around, and I had a great time with it. So I very much look forward to sitting down, over a weekend or something, and just kind of enjoying it as one big film, effectively.
Yeah.
Being like, I'm gonna knock out some Falcon and Winter Soldier. Great. Extra credit, other suggestions if you like this show. The things that Disney Plus will recommend to you are, of course, WandaVision, Captain America: The Winter Soldier, Captain America: Civil War, Marvel Studios Assembled, which is kind of the behind-the-scenes series on these shows. Marvel Studios Legends, which is basically like the, hey, here's everything you need to know about the Falcon before you come into this, or here's everything you need to know about the Winter Soldier before you come into this. It's your recap episodes. And then a trio of Avengers films, Infinity War, Endgame, and they keep trying to push Avengers Age of Ultron. They really want you to sit down and watch that one.
Underrated gem.
It's interesting.
It's good. Extracurriculars. You guys watching anything else on Disney Plus these days? Tucker, I'll throw it to you first.
I'm more of a film guy, film nerd. So Disney Plus is not that. I use it for
they have a lot of
my
films.
Marvel content. Sure, but I'm more of a Criterion Channel kind of guy in terms of my
Fair.
film going experiences. So I watch a lot of movies on other kind of things that are. I watch a lot of older movies, especially. Disney Plus, not great for that. Great for the content that they have, and I think seeing what they're doing with their Marvel and their Star Wars content and how they're going to play that into the future. Holy God, I'm so excited. I'm so excited, man. Phase 4 is everything I could have wanted it to be. I remember sitting in the car and seeing, while they were announcing Phase 4 and seeing all of my favorite runs get transitioned into live action, full production. Jane Foster Thor, the Vision comics, Captain America Sam Wilson, Miss Marvel, my favorite superhero, now getting a show. Oh my God. Disney Plus, you're speaking to me from the Marvel front. From everything else, maybe not so much, but that's strong enough for me to just be paying whatever I need to.
There you go.
For to get that content.
You got Loki coming back in a month to give you.
Oh,
I'm so excited for that.
I'm very, especially as like the third series. Like I think that's going to be another completely different thing compared to WandaVision and Falcon and Winter Soldier. Like,
and then what if? That's something completely different.
Oh, yeah, summertime.
That's gonna be great. But yeah, when we were talking earlier about like the fight stuff, I was like, I wonder if they're going to have, like, I'm sure they'll have a couple action sequences and stuff in Loki, but Loki feels like it's going to be much more of a talky kind of series. And Loki, of course, manipulating and being sneaky and conniving and all that stuff. So, yeah, I'm very fascinated to see where that comes. So,
Same.
Then we will welcome you back into the Disney Plus fold when Loki comes around, Tucker. How about you, Myron? You watching anything else on Disney Plus? Any of that Star Wars May the Fourth be with you content? Anything?
Honestly, you know that right in the head. I am a guy who missed out on Clone Wars back in the day, so I'm trying to organize myself to watch it in chronological order and stuff like that.
Oh, you're one of those guys. It's like
I have to. I just can't jump in.
Let me scour the internet for the proper chronological way of this show, this anthology show. Okay.
But yeah, so I kind of missed out on all that stuff early on, and I'm not a giant Star Wars head, but I do like it. So I like, especially after Mandalorian. So I've started watching Clone Wars.
Nice. Yeah, so the Bad Batch obviously came out this week as kind of their big May the 4th be with you day. I watched Clone Wars over the years, like when it was on Netflix and stuff like that. I haven't had like cable or anything in like probably a decade plus, so I was never watching it like as it was airing. But I eventually, when Disney Plus came out, I got all caught up on Clone Wars. I watched all of Rebels. So yeah, Bad Batch. I turned it on at like midnight that night, and I was like, "Oh, I'm probably not gonna like. I have work early in the morning. I'm probably not gonna stay up and watch this. I'll catch it some other time." And then I looked at like, "Oh, and it's an hour and 10 minutes. Oh, okay, I'm definitely not gonna do that." And then I, 2 a.m. and I'm finishing up or something like that. I was like, "Okay, well, I'm just not gonna sleep that much tonight." Really enjoyed that. It was a ton of fun, and I look forward to seeing kind of this story that they're going to tell with these. It's effectively the Clone Wars season 8 basically, but a new cast of characters that we're going to follow into the post Order 66 era. We may end up doing an episode of that D Plus show somewhere down the line, based on that episode, especially because like the first episode is basically a mini movie. Aftermath was really good, and I look forward to seeing. I think Friday, I think we're getting our second episode of that, and then we're going to get like Friday episodes for the next couple months. So so yeah, it's going to be really cool. And then I also the third season of Ducktales came out to Disney Plus, the third and final, tragically, season of the new Ducktales reboot. And I sat down and watched a few episodes of that, and just loving it, having a great time. I also watched The Good Dinosaur on Pixar, or the Pixar movie,
is
The
that?
Good Dinosaur. Not great.
That's the only Pixar movie I haven't seen.
It was
Me
the
too.
only one I
Same.
hadn't seen either, and I watched it. So the guy who was potentially going to join us on the podcast tonight, Josh Brown, hosts a podcast, a sister kind of friend podcast of that D Plus show called The Castle Vault, and he and his co-host Jason, when they launched, they went through basically chronologically all of the Disney animated films. And now they're basically in season 2 where they're going through all of the Pixar movies, and occasionally like to bring on guests. And they reached out, and I was like, I've never watched The Good Dinosaur, so let me watch that, and you'll get kind of like my first impressions of The Good Dinosaur. Yeah, not great. We end up spending like the first half hour talking about the Mighty Ducks instead, and just having a good time with that. So, because since again we did a month of Mighty Ducks content here on that D Plus show, so. But yeah, it was a ton of fun. Even if the movie itself was pretty lackluster. It's not the worst Pixar movie. I would still put that at Cars 2, but it was pretty
Sure.
down there. So Good Dinosaur, not great. I would instead just recommend you watch Dinosaurs on Disney Plus if you want a dinosaur themed content. Yeah, go watch the dinosaurs, not the mama, and all that stuff. So yeah, I think that wraps up what I've been watching. And I think that's going to do it for this week's episode of That D Plus Show. Thank you guys for joining me. It's a pleasure not only like meeting you, but sitting down podcasting with both of you.
Amazing.
Yeah. So thank you for joining me to talk about The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. You can follow Tucker at, I'm going to say your actual Twitter handle there, Zurki.
Okay, let's try it.
TZURKI. But also at Backlog Banter. So once again, Tucker, where can the people find you doing stuff?
Primarily just YouTube, Backlog Banter. We've got videos coming out 4 or 5 days a week, which is a lot. But got all sorts of different content over there. Yeah. You got all sorts of different content over there if you like comic based stuff, you like movies based stuff, you like game news, you like reviews, all sorts of stuff for your viewing pleasure. And I hope that someone from this finds my channel and hopefully joins that, because I also have a Discord for some of my friends from that channel to join. I'd love to meet more people. So I'm very glad that I was able to sit down with you guys. It's my first official guest appearance on any podcast, and I had a great time. Yeah. You guys are very fun to bounce off of. So thank you so much for having me.
Likewise, thank you for answering the call when I put out the tweet of like, hey, anybody want to come talk about Falcon?
I had never interacted with you before. I didn't know your show. I didn't know that nerdy site. I did my research though. I watched some of your videos. I came up and I'm like, hey, I would love to be part of this, and it just randomly worked out so well. So thank you very much.
Yeah, no, I'm glad we were able to make it work. You can follow Myron Scott at Myron Scott, but without the vowels, without the O's, basically. Anything you want to give a shout out to there, Myron?
I'm working out at Level 1, so check them out. Do their editing on tech reviews, and soon enough, more gaming stuff. And check out my stuff, like vlogging, reviews, photography, and photography stuff. To be honest.
Very cool.
That's what mostly I would do.
Great. Yeah. Go find all of those. I'll link both those YouTube channels in the description for both the podcast and the YouTube video. So go check them out. They're doing some cool stuff. You can follow me at Trevor J. Starkey. I will just shout out that episode of the Castle Vault that I did. You can go check out me appearing with my friends Josh and Jason talking about the Good Dinosaur this week on their stuff. It was a good, fun 2-hour conversation. And again, it's a lot of just kind of ragging on the movie, but also we talk about Mighty Ducks for half an hour, and I blow their minds with some of the Mighty Ducks trivia I had been highlighting on this show. So you can go check that out. You can follow all of us over at That Nerdy Site or thatnerdysite.com for all the latest from everything on our channel. If you liked what you heard, once again, please like, rate, review, subscribe, share with your friends, all that fun stuff. And once again, if you do feel so inclined, you can always support us on Patreon at patreon.com/thatnerdysite. Thank you for joining us. As always, stay nerdy, be good to each other, and class dismissed.